I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Welcome everyone to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist, and a very special welcome to my guest today, Adelle Sushames. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I have this unfortunate habit of when I get nervous to talk over people, so I apologize in advance for how many times I'll do that today.
That's fine. I can relate.
Yeah, I think that people might recognize your name. I'll introduce a little bit about you. So you're a late diagnosed AuDHD clinical psychologist. And a few years ago, you created several card decks for other therapists, and you now have 5 card decks to help AuDHDers understand themselves and communicate about their support needs. You are also known for your social media content, and that's where I wanted to say, as the Neurodivergent Ally might be a name that people recognize pretty quickly. And that's where you walk the line between professional and parent with plenty of sass and the occasional eye roll. I love that description. Is that just in social media? Because I bring a bit of sass and eye rolling to my parenting as well.
Oh, look, I think social media is probably the place where it's most tame compared to other
Yeah,
areas
okay.
of life, whether that's work or at home.
Yeah.
But I'm always mindful of, the ever-present threat of APRA jail with something that I may say or do on social media. So I just do try to rein it in a little bit there.
Yes, yeah. I feel like it is a really interesting time to, you mentioned APRA, and so for parents who don't know, that's the regulation body for psychologists in Australia, where, um, we have to make sure what we're saying is, you know, factual and correct all the time, but then also there's that extra worry of how people might interpret things. Um, Interestingly, because we've just heard yesterday, I think, about the um, situation in America with people, them announcing that they found the cause of autism and that kind of thing. And it's interesting then to think about whether or not to comment on that. I think that depends on whether you're going to go to the US in the next year or so, too, that people might be trawling what you say on social media. So, yeah, it's an interesting time to try to bring awareness and advocate while still being careful, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there is some extent of mirroring of that situation here in Australia now too, with the upcoming changes to the NDIS and some of the information and misinformation that's being put out through the media, which is really disappointing because we have some really amazing, correct, current information that helps us to best understand autism and neurodivergence generally, and to have government figures, misrepresent that seemingly intentionally to
Mm.
further their own priorities is really concerning, but I guess not entirely surprising.
No, but definitely divisive, I think, and yeah, disappointing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we want to talk about a more positive note today about the way that we can support kids, either autistic kids or ADHDers or AuDHDers, the term commonly used for when kids are both autistic and have ADHD. Or I'm saying kids because I work with kids, but it's all
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah.
The card decks that you've created, and the information you share through your website neurodivergentally.com, are a lot of them are centered around spoon theory, which we'll get into in a little bit, but also the ND Me cards are a way to help all people understand the neurodivergent kind of aspects of themselves. But would you describe it in a more comprehensive way than that, or a clearer way?
The NDME cards specifically, do you mean?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, look, with the NDME cards, what I wanted to do was just to give people an easy to understand common language that captured, all of the different, well, not all, obviously it's not impossible to capture all of them, but as many of the different autistic and ADHD traits, characteristics, behaviors as I could that didn't sound like what we read about in the DSM or on those more traditional information websites, which are very medical model
Mm,
in their origins. But yeah, provided a common language, but also a way that people could actually recognize those aspects of themselves when they might not recognize them in that traditional DSM speak, that psychiatry speak. Because,
mm,
to be honest, I would not have recognized myself in the DSM criteria and didn't for much of my life, despite working in autism predominantly and then in diagnostics. Like, it's borderline embarrassing, but for the fact that we know that, the information is presenting a certain aspect of the autistic experience, but it doesn't capture all of that. And that's,
yeah.
part of what we're working to change as professionals in this space now.
Yeah, and I think just to give parents an example too, so some of the ND me cards say things, for example, like rather than the some of the old language might be being hyperactive or fidget, and the ND cards say I like to keep my hands busy, and things like I prefer less eye contact. So it's not, a deficit or having difficulty, it's just about preferences.
Mhm.
I love the one I geek out on topics others find boring. That's like a fun and positive way to explain it rather than what might have been considered a more negative approach in the past. So it's yeah, features or characteristics of autism that kids can relate to. I've
Mhm.
I'm saying kids again. I've used this with teenagers where they have gone through and I've said things like, this is a range of characteristics. Some might apply to you, some might not. And they will go through and go, yep, that's me. That is definitely me. And they'll collect them to themselves. Like there's this positive identity part of it, and others they'll
Mm.
be like, eh. And so it's a great way to parents are often looking for a strength-based way to have these conversations with their kids. So
Mm.
they're a great
Yeah.
resource for that.
Yes, and I mean, there are loads of, like, many more now, children's books that address being autistic and ADHD, but I
Mm,
find, and I've found this clinically for many years too, working predominantly with children as you do, that many kids really don't resonate with books. I mean, some do, obviously,
yeah,
but to sit down with a child, if they're not ready either for that
yeah.
type of conversation, a book is a fairly confronting way to do it, whereas
Mhm.
cards seem to just be this natural bridge between the person we're wanting to have the conversation with and ourselves as professionals or even as parents, where we can just
Mm,
spread them out. We don't have to do it in a really, obvious kind of pressure filled way. It can just be, hey, look at these cards I got. This one's true about me. Do you think that's true about dad? Which ones are right for you and which ones aren't? Without even introducing the topic that, hey, this is about autism and ADHD, that can come later.
yeah, that's
Mm.
right. Um, and it's just about, self-awareness and self, understanding, I think is so good. But also, I guess I'm saying this because I think this as psychologists, we probably use tools like cards a lot, but for parents, what I would say is that, sometimes you don't know all of the things to say, and your kids don't know all of the things either. And so cards provide, rather than, questions and answers, there's a lot of options there that then kids can either say yes or no to. I guess it provides the information and then it just lets you recognize it or not recognize it. You don't have to come up with the information yourself. And so it makes the conversations a lot easier to have.
Mm. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And so what I wanted to talk about a bit more today was spoon theory, because you've got some great cards based around spoon theory as well. Can you give us a bit of a explanation in your words about what spoon theory is and how
Mm.
we can use it for neurodivergent people?
Yeah, absolutely. So spoon theory is not anything that I came up with myself. It was actually originally put out into the world as an idea by a lady called Christine Miserandino. I think I've pronounced that correctly. Sometimes my brain turns some of the letters about and it comes out differently.
Mm,
But she was explaining to just a friend of hers in a cafe one day what it's like to live with lupus as a chronic health condition and how your energy fluctuates and capacity fluctuates alongside of that. And so she just happened to pick up a spoon off the table because they were in a cafe and it was close to hand. And
mhm,
she was like, imagine you've got 12 of these. That's your energy for the day. A shower might cost one. Going to an appointment might cost two. Some days, all of your energy might be used up before lunchtime. Other days, it's more, um, a paced kind of situation. And so I think that really got that message across really well for people to understand what it's like to live with a different body, with
mhm,
different needs and different energy capacities on different days. But it didn't take long for the neurodivergent community more broadly, not just autistic people and ADHDs, but plenty of others with chronic health or chronic mental illness issues as
mhm,
well. Mental health issues, and to kind of say, oh, that's actually feels that really resonates with us. And what I really liked about it as a psychologist who works with children most of the time was that it just really provided such a simple explanation about why my child can do something this day, but not another day. And I remember
mm,
working in early intervention for years, and there was this dreaded term regression. And so this term was
mhm,
bandied about if a child seemed to lose a capacity or to go through a period of time where they could no longer do something they had previously done. And it just seemed to put the fear of God into parents that their child might experience that because it had these real doom and gloom connotations. But when you kind of look at
mhm.
it through the lens of spoon theory, it's like, oh, they've used up their capacity that day or that week or that month. It'll come back when it comes back, or when there are
Yeah,
fewer other demands put on the child or
yeah,
the young person. So I really liked that about it because it made more sense to me
mm,
than the more traditional
mm,
ways that we had of explaining what was going on.
mm. And it is scary for parents, that idea that maybe things are starting to go backwards, and that it's gonna follow that track, but fluctuating, and the spoons gives this idea of kind of up and down, kind of waves that are going through, um, time instead.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, like you said, it's a great way to, understand why, yeah, because I get the question from parents sometimes too, that they could do it yesterday and they're not doing it today, so they're just choosing not to, or, um,
Uh-huh.
they're digging in, they're being difficult. But do you see that spoon theory kind of gives an alternate explanation for that as well?
I think it does, yeah, like, the number of kind of surprised faces and raised eyebrows that I've had from parents in my clinic room when we've had the spoons cards out on the floor and I've given them actual teaspoons to use, the child or the young person, and the parent really only needs a brief explanation, the spoons are their energy, they've got
Mhm,
12. These are the things that use it up. Notice that card over there. That's using 3 spoons. That's a lot to use just on that one thing. This is why after school you're seeing this particular way of, relating to others at home and difficulty with regulating emotions because all the spoons have been used up at school or even before the end of the
mm,
school day. It's just that big aha light bulb moment that
yeah,
happens, and it makes it really concrete for them to be able to
yes,
physically, visibly see the spoons are being used up here, but look at all those other cards that we also expect, representing activities and events that we're also expecting kids to navigate in their day. They haven't even done those things and the spoons are all used up. So this is why they're struggling
yeah,
so much. And I think also
yes,
for parents, because we know neurodivergent kids often come with neurodivergent parents and they're having a little bit of their own moments of insight as well and recognizing, well, if they find these things challenging, just because it looks different to
mm.
them as adults, the things that they're struggling with, it helps to really build that empathy as well for the experience that their child is having.
Yeah, that's right. And it can become a way, I think, where you can have conversations as a family as well, because we've all, as parents too, sometimes stressed, more busy than usual. And so it's an idea that can be applied to everybody, um, if we understand that all people have different things that take their energy and use up a different amount of energy, it opens up the conversation.
Mm.
Some of the, just for parents who are listening, some of the things you've detailed on the spoon. Um, so you've got, maybe this would be better if you tell us a little bit about the spoon thieves set and
Mhm.
then the spoon savers set of cards that you have.
Sure. Yeah. So the Spoon Thieves set and the Spoon Savers set are 2 decks of cards that have 60 cards per deck, and they're looking at what are the things that use up our spoons, our energy. What are the things that deplete us? What are the things that overwhelm us? What are the things that are naturally more difficult for us because of our autistic or ADHD brain types, right? And then the Spoon Savers are the things that either make coping with those spoon thieves easier, or their supports or
Hmm.
accommodations, or things that help us to replenish our spoon. So things that really, make us feel safe, connected, joyful, at peace, those kinds of things. And they're very AuDHD flavored, of course. So they're things like, having time alone, having quiet time, having access to technology, being in nature, being with animals, engaging in special interests, that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
it's very specific to these brain styles. So those 2 card decks came about originally with NDMe, and the 3 decks are focused on being able to be used across the lifespan. So from younger children right through to adults. And then more recently, I put out another couple of decks of the Spoon Thieves cards, but they're specific to school. So they're Spoon
Mm.
Thieves at school and Spoon Savers at school. And they came about because school can't was becoming a more and more prevalent issue in my own practice, but also in my own household. So my youngest had, I think, 2 terms where they were unable to attend school last year. And so I
Hmm.
actually included conversations about the spoon thieves and spoon savers with them as part of our attempt at homeschooling to get their input into
Mm.
all of the things that are hardest for you at school and what you think might be happening for others that have a similar brain style to you. And so it was really nice, kind of ticked a number of boxes as an activity for us to do for their schooling, but also because I could see that there was definitely a need in the community to have a
Mm.
more specific tool to help communicate what the challenges were and what might actually assist in terms of accommodations or just teacher understandings to help get kids in a place where they felt more safe and confident to be at school for those who could, but also for
Yeah.
those who are really heavily in school, school can't or are burnt out, to be able to recognise how that came about so that they're not so much, blaming themselves about it and can have more
Mm.
self-compassion during the time that they need to recover from that, and to
Yeah.
recognise that, either I go back to school at some point in time with these supports in place and hopefully have a better experience, or maybe school's not for me for these reasons and we can work on, achieving our education goals another way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so some of the examples of spoon thieves in um, the outside of school pack are things like wearing uniform when others don't care about my spins, their special interests,
Mhm.
doing chores, getting dressed, regulating attention, maintaining relationships, and that kind of thing. And some of those occur in school for sure,
Mm.
but I think from my point of view too, what it helps, well, I guess going back a bit, the spoon theory idea too, I think helps understand for a lot of kids why once they get home from school, they're done in the afternoon as well. Um, because I think it's really hard for families a lot of the time to know what is draining at school because they're not there, they're not always experiencing it. So what are some of the things that it were specific to the school spoon
Mhm.
stealer cards?
Yeah, so that deck really captures a lot more of the experiences that kids and teens have while they're at school. So things
Mm.
like not being able to find what they need to get started with their
Mhm.
work, which is a classic ADHD trait.
Mm.
Things like feeling lonely if their friend was not at school for the day, because we know lots of autistic kids in particular might only have 1 or 2 close friends, and if that person's not there, it feels really impactful for them to then be at school alone without
Mm.
that
Mhm.
person. Also things like the different sensory elements of school, like bad smells in the classroom, or
Mhm.
needing to listen to something like music to be able to block out external distractions, things like that. Yeah, so there's a lot of that that comes to mind, but I think, like you said, like, it helps parents to understand that after school there is a lot of, you know, after school meltdown, shutdown, energy depletion
Mhm.
that happens, and for some of us, there's still even that pressure to be getting our kids to do more, so homework is
Mm,
something that
mhm.
comes up, and I can recall, with one of my kids for their learning plan, the teacher was trying to push for half an hour of technology after school and some time on special interests, and then coming up and doing homework again
Mm,
before, bedtime, and I was just like, the little bit of downtime that they've had and some time to engage with their special interests, yes, that helps to replenish some
mm.
of that energy, but it's not bringing them up to the point where now we're gonna make you do more schoolwork at home
Yes.
when you've already had that full day. So just being able to help, um, kids and parents and teachers to understand that it's not such a simple equation as energy out, energy in. It's more of a
Yeah.
broader, guiding principle for us to be aware of and to use to make
Yeah.
sense of when things are not going well.
Yeah, that's right. I think too it's, uh, what I think is interesting too is thinking about then, those kids who sometimes are coming home from school and then there might be meltdowns and shutdowns and that kind of thing. A common thing I hear from, parents is that the teachers say that they're fine at school. And I think sometimes we're underestimating how much kids are doing at school and how much their energy is being drained. And without that kind of proactive thing like spoon savers and taking breaks and rests and re energizing throughout the day, then it sets kids up to not be able to handle it anymore once they finish.
Hmm.
And this is a great way to open up those conversations between parents and teachers.
Yes. Yeah, I think it kind of helps us to understand we have this situation where we're often on, it feels like on a hamster wheel, where school is saying your child seems fine, they don't need supports, and you
Mm,
advocate for supports, and supports are put in place and things improve for the child, either visibly or not. And then the school says, oh, well, they're doing better now, they don't need the support anymore. And so
yes.
then the support's not available or is withdrawn. And I think just trying to imagine from the perspective of the child or the young person what that feels like when
Mm,
support is, not easily given, but very easily taketh away. Like, you don't know what, it's very unpredictable, and our nervous systems don't respond well to that
yeah.
in general, let alone when, you're an autistic person, you need to know what's
Yeah.
happening, what to expect, that predictability, that sameness, that is what safety is for us.
Mm,
So,
mhm.
yeah, I think, just recognizing that it's not an oversimplification, it's just a tool to help with understanding and communication, but it can have very broad positive outcomes when it's used well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting and something that probably from my neurotypical perspective, I'd missed a little bit that I can see obviously that doesn't make sense to take supports away that have worked and that's why things are better now. But that idea that then that unpredictability of whether the support will be there or not is another stressful event. And um, yeah, that's a really useful observation.
Hmm.
The, other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, I guess, is, I can relate this idea and this conversation a little bit to us as adults and the idea for self-care and that kind of thing. And I'm always advocating for parents to not wait until your tank is empty to refill it. We don't want to kind of wait till that point where we've run out of petrol to fill it up. Do you kind of advocate for that a similar kind of approach for kids that we're not just trying to, use the 12 spoons every day? We're not trying to push them to the limit, or what's your perspective on that?
Mm. Look, the number 12, I think, was just a very arbitrary example that was chosen by the creator of spoon
Yeah.
theory. It's not,
Yeah.
based in any sort of neuroscience. So,
Mm.
capacity, when I think about spoon theory, I think there's two ways to interpret it. And one is that neurodivergent people in, the examples that we're thinking of have less energy to begin with because
Mhm.
of the ways that our brain styles and our bodies are different from neurotypical or holistic people. So the other interpretation could be that all of the different daily activities that we're required to participate in cost more energy. So it's either that
Right.
we have less or they cost more. It doesn't really matter which way you look at it.
Yeah.
It's a mismatch. And
Mhm.
that's where I think we can't be going about saying, "Oh, well, we'll just figure out things that will, prop up your spoons, balance, and you're good to go," because we've got to
Yeah.
recognize that fundamentally there is that lack of fit between the world and its systems and processes that are created by or to most benefit neurotypical people, and then we've got a bunch of
Mm.
neurodivergent people trying to get
Mm.
along in amongst
Yep.
all of that. Mm,
Yeah, absolutely. So it's more an understanding of the idea that, yeah, you have less energy, or these kids in our lives where we're helping and loving have less energy, or that things cost more energy, and to be aware of that.
mm, mhm.
Yeah. And it's not as simple as math where you can, you've asked them to do 6 things and now, or, you've given them time and then now they can do 6 more things for you. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, no.
Yeah. But I guess, bringing it back to what we were talking about in the beginning, the positive idea from it is that um, it's a natural fluctuation based on what's going on in the days and weeks of these young people, and that the energy will come back, and a way of communicating about these things with our kids can help them understand themselves and what drains their energy and what brings it back, so that they are better placed to manage all of the things they want to do in their lives.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to remember, like, I just say to parents often, like, space and grace, like, that's what we need to give our AuDHD kids because many of them are either on the borderline of or are actually in burnout because of
Mm,
having to mask and having to use this extra energy and find it from somewhere, be in environments that don't support their nervous systems very well. And it can be very frightening for parents when you have a child that has reached that point of what seems like the no return, like they're missing
mm,
school, unable to be at school, they're withdrawing from their social activities or their sports or whatever, and just wanting to be alone in their rooms on their devices or, watching their favorite TV shows over and over again or engaging in their special interests. It feels, when you're in the thick of that, it feels like it might never end.
mm,
But
mhm.
often we hear stories and examples of times when it actually you do come out the other side of that. Our kids can come out the other side of that, but because we lack that certainty, it does feel really uncomfortable, that state for us to be in, because we're also, as parents, constantly fighting our own internalized ableism that we have around parenting should be done this way. And there are also plenty of
Yeah.
experts out there in social media that are happy to tell us that parenting should be done this way, and
Yep.
that we need to put boundaries in and we need to have responsibilities for our children and we need to have expectations. They aren't very neurodivergent friendly approaches,
Mm,
and it's
mhm.
as much work for us to support our kids in their recovery as it is for our kids to be able to go through their recovery. And then
Mm,
we start to see them resurfacing with more, you know, interest in what's going on outside the four walls, with more requests to go out in the community, to maybe go back to school, to have friends over, that kind of thing. Like, the signs will come eventually. It's just about being really patient and being kind to them and us with that
yes.
self-compassion while we
Yep.
wait it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that explains a bit in a more clear way what I was trying to get at before about, just I like the idea of space and grace as a way to understand what kids need, and that idea that if we can just pop up. our kids with what they need so that they can just always perform at the highest level, or that kind of pressure that does lead to the burnout and all of that kind of stuff. I guess that's what I was trying to get at. If we can move away from thinking about what we can do to make sure that kids still can do all of the expectations, maybe it's about giving a bit more space and grace then to try to um, avoid the burnout in the first place.
Yes, yeah, and I'm not sure if, you've come across this term or not, but there's definitely been a shift, I suppose, in our understanding and awareness of what we call autistic or ADHD culture, and this idea of
Mm,
leaning into autistic culture or ADHD culture and trying to cultivate as much as possible a household and a lifestyle that actually aligns better with what that neurotype is letting us know that is needed, rather
yeah.
than kind of trying to do things the traditional way. All meals must be eaten at the table, children must
Mhm.
be in bed by this time, homework must be completed, you must shower every day, all of those kind of things. Being able to
Yes.
replace
Yeah.
those with ways of approaching each of those parts of life, but in a more ADHD friendly way, and actually
Yeah.
almost a kind of radical acceptance of that. So being able to really lean in and give permission to us and to them to live in that more aligned way as a
Mm.
way of, protecting mental health and protecting well-being.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Absolutely. And reducing everybody's stress in the meantime, kids and their parents, and
Yes. Yep.
the more calm and stress-free our home is, the better for everybody.
Mm.
So,
Yes. Yeah, I think that's really
yeah.
true, and I think it's also true it's in schools, because I think often about the fact that we were talking before about kids not knowing whether to expect that their supports will be in place or not on any given day, and then you
Mm.
throw a relief teacher into the mix, and, we've all seen IEPs, they're very wordy, they're very dense with information. How can teachers possibly get across all of this information for however many kids are in their class that have an individual education plan or different learning needs? But I think the more that we can create classrooms that actually embody those
Yeah.
principles,
Yes.
most, if not all, of the kids will benefit, even the neurotypical ones, because they're very learning friendly, they're very sensory friendly, they're very emotional regulation friendly ways of
Yep.
doing things. And it also then
Yeah.
takes pressure off teachers once they've got those things in place to feel like they have to
Yeah.
know exactly how to respond to every ADHD child's needs throughout their class in
Yes.
all of the different situations that they encounter. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's right. But I agree with you that the more calm and settled all the kids are, that the more calm and settled teachers would be. I imagine
Mm,
myself in that position and think, yeah, crikey, it would be incredibly difficult to have kids who are so
yeah.
stressed because they're just not
Mm,
they're, the expectations are just beyond what matches for them. So,
mm,
yeah, excellent. So, I'm really interested to see more about the school cards because I haven't seen those ones before. But
mhm,
you have them all available on your website, neurodivergentally.com. And you've also mentioned that you have a free children's book about a child who learns about their own ADHD brain available for families, which is on your website and under the a freebies tab that you have.
mhm, mm,
Um, and I was saying before, just before we started recording as well, that you've also got a spoon theory for autism and or how it can help us understand autism and ADHD
just a
sheet
handout.
as well.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, which I
Yeah.
think is super helpful for families, but also to be able to share with teachers as well.
Mm. Yeah, and, like, I mean, I mentioned before that I think that, books children's books aren't for all kids to be able to
Mm,
really,
mhm,
engage with, but there certainly are quite a subset of kids out there that really do enjoy books and being read to and looking at the illustrations and things like that. So I think, the card decks came first because I wanted a clinical tool. That was my driving,
mhm.
force behind it, because I couldn't find, the card decks I could find were very generic, or they were very deficit focused, or they were kind of, emotional regulation strategies, which were really for neurotypical kids, not for
Right.
those that are autistic or ADHD. And so that's how the cards came about. But then more recently, I put the book together because it's a really nice tool for families to have. Therapists can use it. I have a therapist friend who says that, she prints out copies and they write in the margins and make it
Mhm.
personalised to the child that, you know, she's working with, which is really lovely. And yeah, that's available on the website, and that will actually be coming out as well as a paid resource, like a hardcover book with really beautiful illustrations, because I know for me, growing up as an unidentified autistic
Mhm.
child, I loved books and reading, and the pictures were everything, especially if they were, you know, had
Yeah.
lots of animals and nature in it. And so I've, you know, found a an illustrator who does beautiful, beautiful work, and that's really coming very close to being put together as a product now. So I can't wait to have that out there, because even though not all autistic kids or ADHDs will resonate with it, it's a great classroom resource to teach about
Yes.
neurodiversity generally,
Yep.
to have, you know, other
Yeah.
kids increasing their understanding too, because that's such a big impactful way to support
Mm.
ADHDs in schools, is to have other kids not, you know, questioning or teasing or making fun of because of things that are outside of a person's control, but to have that understanding of, oh, this is how their brain works. This is what they need.
Yes.
What they need. That's not actually that difficult to accommodate. You know, kids are often
No.
better acceptors and accommodators than us as adults, because they haven't had their
Yeah.
you know, views shaped quite so strongly yet.
Yeah, that's right. Most of the time, if they just understand, they go, "Oh, okay, and I'll help you
Mm,
with that."
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really exciting. That's excellent. Here's hoping it makes it into most classrooms as part of the curriculum. That would be awesome.
That would be, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm really excited about it.
Excellent. Well, so there's the book or there's card options, and they're ones
Mhm.
that anybody can use. Families, it's a great way to continue having conversations. As you say, you can use them into adulthood. So it's a resource your kids can use right throughout their life. So
Mm,
it's a
that's
wonderful
right.
thing to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's yeah, just really great to hear from somebody who has, put so much time and effort into creating those resources that kids, in my experience, have really benefited from, and to be able to share the ways that their families can do that with them as well.
Mhm. Thanks, Leanne. I really enjoyed chatting with you about it all too.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.